invention into a true free diving apparatus. This one. Today, both men are honored in their little town and in this museum, and largely ignored in the rest of the world. Because everyone attributes, quite wrongly so, their invention to another team of another French engineer and another naval officer, a very famous sea captain, who built 80 years later what is essentially the very same machine, except that they built it at the right time in the development of the technology of compressed air and at the right time in the evolution of the leisure market.
But in 1860, the leisure market did not exist. The incredulous might ask, would it really work? The museum was happy to prove it. The sales brochure describes the machine as an artificial lung or reservoir regulator and was first tested under this bridge at Espalion. It is shown as a machine of classical simplicity, a pressure tank of air holding 8 litres and, mounted above it, the regulator valve, a true forerunner of Captain Cousteau's device of the 1940s. Robert Sternouilly was anxious to try this original machine for real.
Parfait.
The equipment is not complete without the nose clip, a true pince-nez. The pressure in the tank is raised to 250 pounds, and the diver is free to go.
Les pompeurs, oui.
There is a tradition of naked diving with bare eyes in this part of France, giving rise to the following remark from the catalogue. Water is more tonic than harmful for the sight. The general rule is that one must keep one's sight free when working underwater. There are great advantages to that with regard to the rapidity of working. Apart from the problems of vision, the machine worked perfectly.
Impeccable. Impeccable. Merci, messieurs. Vous étiez très bien.
This machine is the low-pressure version, capable of working without the hose for short periods at depths of up to 20 feet. With the hose, the diver can work freely for as long as he can stand the cold. But could he swim freely with the device?
Impeccable, hein?
With tanks recharged, a second attempt was made without the sandals. The aqualung had almost arrived. But this was essentially a machine designed for work, and something had to be done about the cold. The answer, somewhat impractically, was a woolen diving dress, complete with the traditional diver's red hat. And something had to be done about the eyesight. Goggles, such as are worn by locomotive drivers, was their answer. At first sight, a correct solution, but not everything they invented was right first time.
On pouvait s'y attendre. Plein d'eau immédiatement. Bon, ça...
By 1865, a second classical solution had been designed to overcome the problems of cold and vision. The gouin, or snout. The helmet and rubberized suit were not designed to hold breathable air, but simply to make the artificial lung more comfortable, a sort of 19th century dry suit.
Montez en pression. Le réservoir est vide là.
There were disadvantages, however, like 20 pounds of lead on top of the head to counteract buoyancy.
Serrez les dents.
All this effort also had the effect of consuming more air. It was a case of one step forward, two steps backward, until a high-pressure tank was evolved. But it worked, and still does. It was sold effectively for many years to the navies of the world, and it was available in 1865. Nor was it the end of their ingenuity. Their underwater telephone was patented in 1874.
Robert, si ça va très bien, tu frappes deux coups.
Simple, cheap,
Ok, bien reçu pour
and it
moi, je
worked.
la fais descendre tout de suite à l'échelle. Rendez-vous à l'échelle.
A year later saw their underwater light. The flame of an oil lamp breathed pressurized air through a regulator, just like the diver. Before the advent of electricity, they had solved the problems of light and sound underwater. But the real achievement was the invention of a high-pressure machine, which in 1865 was capable of working autonomously in depths of up to 40 meters. Scuba diving had begun.
Commercially, the invention of the scuba, the free-diving apparatus using a demand valve, had come too early. And equally, it is not very well known that when Jules Verne wrote his 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and put Captain Nemo into a Roquerolles de Nérou's free-swimming apparatus to go and recover the treasures of Vigo Bay, he was actually taking his documentation from commercial brochures of the time. He had not invented anything.
The 19th century was an age of bold leaps of imagination. In Sweden, the difficulty of sailing right around the country was solved using the entire Swedish army to dig a canal from one sea to the other. The result of 20 years' intensive work, the Gotha Canal, opened in 1832 and still used today. The canal links two enormous lakes, and the passage was completed, then as now, by the newly invented self-propelled ships. This was the beginning of the era of the steamship, the earliest in Sweden arriving in 1816. The originality was to use steam power for both lakes and canal. The ships were, of course, paddle steamers, the brief era of steam propulsion soon ousted by the advent of the propeller. And there was a problem inherent in their design for use on a canal with 58 locks to negotiate, the width of the paddle wheels amidships. Typically, an ingenious solution was found, one realized in this ship, one of the earliest, built in 1836 and sketched by the young Prince of Sweden, the Erik Nordenvall. In 1980, this bell was brought up for safekeeping by divers whose patient search relocated this pioneering steamship, remembered only by this childish sketch, and which sank to the bottom of Lake Vättern on the 4th of June, 1856. In 1987, a new expedition of the original divers, together with Carl Olof Söderlund of the Swedish Maritime Museum, sets out across this unpredictable lake, bringing 20th century technology in search of 19th century ingenuity.
Since the ship was located in 1980, there's been developed a plan for the investigation of this ship, and that consists of 3 stages. And the first stage is the documentation or recording of the ship as a whole. And there we are now in the end of that step or stage. And then we have a second one, and that is the raising of objects or even parts of the ship. And then we have a third possible stage, and that is the raising of the ship for preservation and put on exhibition, and for putting on exhibition here in the nearby town of Motown.
This is an exceptional operation, using men and machines. Oka Bernier, the original discoverer, is a professional diver equipped with the latest technology. It's the sort of technology dreamed of by those early pioneers, a light, easily fitted helmet, equipped with communications and supplied with limitless air from the surface, breathed naturally without a mouthpiece. It needs to be. The Eric Nordeval lies in 150 feet of cold, dark water. At this depth, work is limited to 15 minutes in over 1 hour's diving. The Eric Nordeval is exceptional for another reason. She is not a wreck. As in the imagination of Jules Verne, after 130 years underwater, she sits upright on the bottom of the lake, perfectly intact. As if deliberately placed there, she remains, as in the Prince's drawing, funnel, masts and rigging, engines and fittings, all in place. The diver can move about the ship as if her loss had occurred only a week ago.
Det är för dålig sikt och kabeln räcker inte. Du tar en på den gula också, du Buster. Ja, vi avvaktar lite.
From bow to stern, the solid oak hull, preserved by the cold, pure waters of the lake, lies with all its fittings, even to the signal gun, to announce her arrival.
Ja, det är halvdålig bild. Du kan gå tillbaks.
The purpose of the human diving operation is to lay fluorescent green measuring tapes horizontally along the deck in preparation for the second stage of the operation. Not an easy job when all the fittings and superstructure are still lying in position where they were in 1856.
Ja.
The Sea Owl, a remote vehicle, is the second component of the underwater operation.
Fungerar. Ja, den töms.
Bert Westenberg of the Maritime Museum and his colleagues have the task of producing a photographic mosaic of the ship, a task which the Owl can perform without limitation of time or depth. Mr. Lethbridge's engine without the man.
Jag sätter dit.
Guided by its electronic video camera, the Owl records back its position, depth and heading, and its own progress is recorded continuously from the relative comfort of 150 feet above. Specifically adapted to swim vertically, the remote vehicle charts the arrangement of the paddle wheels, specially designed to allow the Nordeval to navigate the narrow locks. In some ships, the wheels were recessed into the hull. In the case of the Nordeval, the wood and iron wheels are simply astonishingly narrow. But this gloom hides no secrets from the Sea Owl, even to the privacy of the ship's toilet. The decks remain intact, for the single reason that on sinking, the ship was under tow and the engines extinguished.
Vi gör så här. Vi går till...
As a result, the boiler did not explode, and consequently everything on the ship, above and below decks, is perfectly preserved within the entire 75 feet of the vessel. As the machine finishes work, the divers begin again.
Ja, men jag frågade om vi skulle slå över förut.
Man, with his ingenuity and sheer adaptability, can do what machines cannot, to go below these decks. Here is the world of the stagecoach afloat, the world of the 1830s, reflected in the intact windows. The folding tables, the paintwork and empire decoration survive in the private cabins. Further aft lie the benches where the saloon passengers may have slept side by side, a reminder of an older way of travelling. To enter this world is a rare experience, but not without its dangers. Yet here is a sight of the world of the 18th and 19th centuries at the moment of transition, the link between the age of sail and the age of steam, embodied in this little ship. The piecing together of this remarkable survivor from the past can now be done in the museum. But it is more than just a composite picture of a ship. It is the picture of a ship which in its own day, 150 years ago, was itself regarded as spectacular as Concorde, and its method of propulsion as feared and as awesome as nuclear energy. From this picture of the Erik Nordeval, as now recorded by underwater archaeology, it is possible to step back into the Industrial Revolution, a possibility undreamt of a generation ago. The ship itself is safe but inaccessible, its history secure. But what of its future?
I would like to get it raised and put in a museum in Motala near the Göta Canal and have it there as a memory of a very vital part of the Swedish history, namely the start of the Industrial Revolution and the Communications Revolution. I think that these vessels coming from the depth, very well preserved, are very good means to present history in a new way, in a very engaging way, and this is one of them.
But perhaps the most spectacular way of all occurred in 1986 on the other side of the Atlantic. The submersible Alvin is lowered from its mothership as the culmination of an expedition to locate underwater a ship whose very construction 100 years ago was unthinkable, whose eventual loss in 1912 was unimaginable, and whose present rediscovery was thought to be impossible. The Titanic. Miles beneath the sea, its discoverer, Dr. Robert Ballard, and his colleague, Martin Bowen, fly a remote camera vehicle from within a machine beyond the wildest imaginings of Jules Verne. They could echo the words of the Egyptologists who first gazed into the tomb of Tutankhamun. We have seen wonderful things. From the smallest prehistoric flint to the world's greatest liner, nothing is now inaccessible underwater. Significantly, Dr. Ballard's final act was to place a memorial on the deck of that great lost ship in the hope that man might profit wisely from his long-awaited legacy from beneath the sea.
Purge par les manches. Hein?